Hello, and welcome to Making Creativity Pay, the podcast where we talk to people in creative industries about how they promote and market their work. I'm Dan Barnett, and on this episode I spoke with comedian Zara Gladman about her Fringe show, and also her sketch show Good for Her, which aired on BBC Scotland and is also available to watch on iPlayer. We talk about turning characters developed on TikTok to ones that can be expanded both into a sketch show and also an hour-long Edinburgh Fringe show. We discuss Zara's use of social media to highlight the cost of putting on a Fringe show, and also how the music of CMAT was a perfect fit to the end of Good for Her. I started by asking Zara to give a quick introduction to herself.
I'm Zara Gladman. I am a Glasgow-based comedian, probably best known for material that I do on TikTok, although I do also do live stuff, and I've also just made my first sketch TV show as well, and I'm coming to the Fringe for the first time this year, so I've dipped into lots of different things.
Yes, so as we're recording, Good for Her went out last night, so to start with, I mean, how's it been? You know, how's it kind of feel that it's actually now out there and people are seeing it and all that?
It's been quite overwhelming. I think I was so wrapped up in the show for so long that I forgot that people would watch it. So I had this knot of anxiety all of yesterday when I realised, oh no, people are actually going to watch this and give their opinions on it. But it went out and I still feel good about what I made, and I had some really nice feedback. So that's been really nice. But yeah, it's been quite an intense 24 hours just having that experience of it going out.
To give a bit more detail about the show, so it was a 20-minute sketch show for BBC Scotland. I mean, how did that all come about? How did you kind of, because it's obviously getting anything made is so difficult. So, how did you do it?
Yeah, and I'm still kind of in slight disbelief that we got to make it. It kind of started for me on TikTok, where I developed a bunch of different characters online, and one of them was a Glaswegian West End mum. So a very privileged woman who lives in the West End of Glasgow, which if you don't know is a very affluent area. And I started putting out clips of this character, and they went viral. And then that led me to then developing a live show that largely focused on that character. And because of this online attention that I had, I got interest from the Comedy Unit, who are a production company in Glasgow that have made shows like Limmy's Show and Still Game. So I was very excited when they started following me. And then I started chatting to them about what I was interested in. They got me writing on a couple of their other shows. And then when it came to me doing my first ever live performance, I invited the Comedy Unit to come and see it. And I also just took a punt and I emailed the head of comedy at BBC Scotland and said, hey, I'm doing this show. Would you like to come? I had no expectations. I just thought, well, I've got nothing to lose by asking. And incredibly, he said yes. And he came along and he saw the show and he saw the response to Aileen, this character. And then after that show, I kind of continued the conversations with the Comedy Unit about what I wanted to make, because in the live show, even though there was a lot of live performance, there were also recorded sketches and film material that I'd produced myself. So I think they saw that I had this clear interest in TV. And I said, well, I want to make a sketch show, which at that time, and this was only last year, I think there was still hesitancy from some producers in the idea of making a sketch show in 2025, because sketch had really gone out of vogue, because sketch shows can be expensive to make, or at least there's that perception. You've got multiple costumes and characters and locations, etc. But the Comedy Unit were up for backing that idea, and then we pitched it to BBC Scotland in September. And then found out a few weeks later that we had a green light to make something short. And then that's how it all began. And I started writing it. And then we filmed it in February this year.
With 20 minutes, did you know from the start kind of how you wanted to kind of pace it and split it up with Aileen and other characters? Or, were you kind of almost still writing as you were filming?
So originally, the commission that we got was actually for 14 or 15 minutes, which isn't very long at all, really. I knew for certain there were particular characters I wanted to be in it. So Aileen was a definite. I have a Scottish singer-songwriter character I really wanted in it as well. kind of sleazy guy that runs an open mic, and a Scottish newsreader character, which again had gone really viral on the internet. So I had a few definites that I knew worked online that I wanted to bring to TV and, really elevate through that production. And in terms of the pacing of it, I wanted it to be pretty fast. I personally have quite a short attention span these days. I think a lot of people do. So I wanted it to be, really engaging and, to hold people's attention. And I guess take a little bit of inspiration from TikTok in a way, and also inspiration from some of my favourite sketch shows that I grew up with, like Smack the Pony and Lemmy's show. So the decision was made that it would, similar to Lemmy, the way that it's mostly him, but then there's a supporting cast, and he has a really amazing mix of comedy styles in his work. He's got stuff that's really dark. He's got stuff that's quite surreal. And I guess my style of comedy, I do like experimenting with different styles as well. So tonally, there's quite a range there. I thought, you know what, I might never get to make something again, and I want something that is representative of all the different types of comedy that I do, whether that is musical stuff or weird stuff. Like I've got a kind of rat character that is a bit unusual, and character driven stuff. So I wanted a mix.
Like I said, it only went out last night, so it's probably a bit early to say this, but do you know what's next for Good for Her and everything else? Because obviously, yes, it's iPlayer all over the country. So yeah, I watched it this morning on BBC One in Scotland. Do you know if there's any kind of plans either for more or a wider distribution on BBC and all the rest of it?
I honestly have no idea. So obviously the hope is with these things that they lead to more commissions or more episodes or things being developed, but I have no idea. I did get some feedback this morning on the viewing figures, which were apparently really, really good. And particularly what I thought was interesting is they found that it reached a lot of women. So there was, I think, a 44% above average viewership of women watching it, which I thought was really cool. So I don't know. I mean, I would love to make more, but I think it probably depends on the appetite for it and how well it does on iPlayer going forward. So have to wait and see. But please, everybody, if you're listening, give it a watch.
And on the end of it, you got CMAT at the end. Because so episode hasn't gone out yet, but I talked to Kathleen Hughes about her as well. I mean, I think she's great full stop, but also it kind of fits in with some of your stuff in that she's not a musical comedian, but there is a lot of humour in her music. Because, I mean, if you said you filmed it in April and that song's probably come out a bit more recently, I mean, was that a kind of thing you thought, yes, this is perfect for the ending?
It was such perfect timing when she released that song. So the song is called Take a Sexy Picture of Me, and it's about CMAT's experience of being trolled by really horrible men on the internet. Now, she talks about clips going out, or I think on the BBC Facebook, they put up clips of her performing, and she had all these really awful comments. So that song is kind of about that experience. And first of all, I love CMAT. I saw her for the first time this year. She is such an unbelievable performer. She's just a born star. She is feminist. She is fun. I love her music. So as a fan, I thought, yeah, that's cool to involve CMAT. But that song in particular, because within Good for Her, I touch on the misogyny that women experience online, and actually I kind of close off the show on that theme. It just worked perfectly for me as an ending. So I'm glad that you noticed that or picked that out, because yeah, I love CMAT.
Yeah, like I said, I can always pivot this podcast to being a CMAT podcast. It probably do a lot better. But so beyond the show, you've obviously got a Fringe show coming up, 13 nights. So is Aileen the main focus of that?
That's right. So about 2/3 of the show is really focused on her, but I do make an appearance as myself, as Zara as well. But really, it's all about that affluent West End mum character, and the kind of concept for the show is that Aileen is coming to the Fringe to raise money for her son to go on his gap year, because I thought that the idea of somebody really privileged coming to the Fringe and asking people for money, I thought was quite funny. So that's the focus.
Doing it for around 2 weeks, was that a financial thing or work-life balance thing or?
Yeah, a bit of both. It's the first time I've ever done the Fringe, and well, as you mentioned there, I've got a full-time job, so if I do the Fringe, I have to use annual leave for that, and I didn't like the idea of using all of my annual leave to do the Fringe. As much as I'm really excited to do it, I thought that's maybe not a healthy approach. And also, I've had to take time off work earlier in the year to film and prepare for filming Good for Her. So I thought, no, be sensible about this. So there's definitely the work-life balance. There's me being new to the Fringe and not knowing how ticket sales would go and just being a bit cautious. And I felt like 2 weeks out of the 3 is probably enough for me to get a flavour of what it's like to be at the Fringe. So that was why.
So far so good, you know that you've almost sold out completely. So you're at your Monkey Barrel?
Yeah, Monkey Barrel Hive too.
Yeah. Looking through it, you could almost, obviously the Fringe is enormous, it's like thousands of people, but you could just go to Monkey Barrel, see a few shows a day, and you would have a fantastic week in Edinburgh. It's crazy the amount of things that are on.
Yeah, I was so happy to be in my Monkey Barrel because last year when I went to the Fringe just as a punter, that is where I spent most of my time. And I saw some of my favourite comedians there, some for the first time. So I saw Stevie Martin's show, which was incredible. I saw Phil Ellis. You could just hang around there all day. So I'm really excited to be in that venue and to get a pass and to take advantage of seeing lots of other comedians, hopefully.
I mean, you've kind of almost done all the promotion up front, which must be nice. Are you kind of a bit disappointed that you won't have to go around flyering?
Oh, I'm devastated. No, I'm feeling pretty good about where it's at, and I guess I've just really been pushing it so hard on social media. That's been the main place I've promoted it. I did get posters printed as well, and I've got posters that I spent hundreds of pounds on for Edinburgh that haven't even gone up yet, and I've only got 5% of my tickets left. So that maybe wasn't the best use of money, but I had no idea, when I booked the posters, and maybe I would have regretted it if I hadn't. So it's been interesting just exploring the marketing side of it and seeing what works. And it turns out social media, it works for me anyway.
Yeah, I think it's the kind of thing that I don't think you can turn up on the 1st of July and think, I'm going to do social media. It's the kind of thing you've had to have built, in your case, for a number of years to kind of get that momentum.
Yeah, I think it definitely helps de-risk the Fringe if you can build up a following and an audience before you go. So I think I would definitely recommend it for people that are doing it for the first time to try and really invest in building that audience before you go.
So obviously the characters kind of started in, kind of 60, 90-second TikToks, and you've now got, you went in the sketch show was slightly longer form, and now you've got an hour show. How have you found kind of moving through those different areas?
So TikTok's great for just testing out new ideas really quickly and seeing what sticks and having those seeds of an idea. But yeah, I think writing an hour is completely different. So I'm able to build on those characters that I've tested out on TikTok. But it's actually, I've really enjoyed having a whole hour to carve out a whole story and, weave in an arc and all of these kind of storytelling things. It's been really, really fun. So I've really enjoyed that part of the process. And I'm not going in completely new. I did last March, I did my first ever hour, which again was kind of building on characters like Aileen. So I know I can do it. So it's given me that confidence to think, okay, I've done it now, done my first test to show that I can transition to stage for that amount of time. And now I feel more confident going into the Fringe now that I've kind of done it that one time.
Looking through some of stuff online, you kind of did some stand-up I don't say way back, it's that rude.
It was way back, to be fair.
Way back in 2011. I mean, was it that it was just like a kind of, I don't want to say hobby is not the right word, but it was just something that you were kind of trying out rather than you were kind of totally focused on. Did it kind of just kind of fall away and other things happened?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I did, like I say, I did stand up for the first time in 2011, and that's when I was a PhD student. And the reason I did it was because there was this project called Bright Club where they got scientists and academics to do stand-up comedy about their specialist subject as a way of kind of engaging the public and raising awareness of research, etc. So I signed up because I was a PhD student with time on my hands who should have been writing up but was looking for a distraction. So I signed up and I really, really loved it. And, it immediately made me realize that I would love to do more comedy. And I did a lot of gigs at that time. And then I did actually start up a Bright Club in Glasgow, and that ran at the Stand Comedy Club for years and years. And I spent a lot of time booking comedians, doing training with researchers, organizing these shows. But it got to the point where I realized I'm doing all of this in my own time. I'm not getting paid for it. It's starting to feel like work because my main job at that time, and still is, was in public engagement with research. So it just felt like an extension of my job that I wasn't getting paid for, and it was taking up so much of my time. So I took a step back from that after a few years. So I think it was just, yeah, I was investing a lot of time in kind of promoting other acts and booking other comedians, and it was rewarding, but it was just such a time suck, and I wanted to do other things. And I think I've just always been quite inconsistent with my comedy as well. I've done little short bursts of activity and then I've done nothing for years and years. And it was only a couple of years ago now that I made the decision. I think it's maybe the acceleration towards turning 40, which happens in September for me, that I thought, I've always loved comedy. Why don't I try and take it a bit more seriously and, do one TikTok a week and see what happens? And that's what I did. And then eventually that's when Aileen came into being. And then I've just kept going. So it's kind of, I feel like it's quite a heartening story in a way, because it shows that you don't even need to be that particularly good. You just have to be consistent and just, really disciplined and do it every week and protect your time. And then you start to get somewhere.
In terms of building that, obviously, no one goes viral with the first thing hardly anyone goes viral with the very first thing they do. I mean, how did you find that kind of building? Did you always kind of see that, there's some sort of progression? So, it gave you that encouragement to keep going.
When I first started making the videos, none of them were going viral. I was just entertaining myself. It was during the lockdown. I think everyone was going a little bit mad. So it was just for my own entertainment. And then I noticed one day I logged into TikTok and one of my videos had gone super viral, and it was a really random one. It was about me lying awake at night and some of the intrusive thoughts that keep me awake. And it just started to do numbers. And I think it did encourage me, because I thought, I'll do another one. I've got plenty of traumatic memories from my past that I can dredge up and mine for comedy. So I did a few more, and then they went viral. So I think you're getting that immediate feedback. And I think you also just have to be completely non-self-conscious about what you're putting out. And I put out stuff all the time that bombs, essentially, but it doesn't matter. You just you have to kind of strip your ego out of it. You'll get an ego rub now and then when something does well, but you also just can't be too precious about it, or you'll never do anything.
It's easy to see, but I mean, when it really happens and, you put something out that you like, but it gets crickets, nothing happens. Yeah. Can you just say, well, it's all part of the algorithm, or do you kind of just doubt the whole point of everything?
I mean, I know that some people will do things like, after they've posted something that dies, they just hide the post, so they'll archive it, which is a cowardly thing to do. You should stand by what you think is funny. I don't think I get too wound up about it. And often, I'll put something out that I think is hilarious, and maybe it doesn't do very well, but there are people who I really respect who do comment or like it. And that means, not that likes are worthless. I really do appreciate the feedback from people, but it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. I think it's what you find funny that is important, and if other people resonate with it, amazing.
Yeah. And in terms of the kind of promotion you're doing, obviously you kind of speaking to various people about getting this out and everything. How have you found kind of speaking as you as opposed to Aileen or other characters? Because I had Noreen Skinner on previously, and she ended up kind of doing flyering almost as Liz Truss as a character, so that you've got that kind of shield. I mean, how have you found kind of talking about you and being you as opposed to being a character?
Yeah, I mean, I do find that the character is a bit of a shield, and I something that really scares me is improv. And I've always shied away from doing much crowd work or that kind of style of comedy because it terrifies me. I'm too much of a control freak. I like to be in full control of what's going on. But I have found when I am in character as Aileen that I find improv much easier for some reason. And I think it is just that it's not me. If people don't find this funny, it's not me, it's Aileen. So you can kind of shift the blame onto her. But even when I am on stage as myself, I suppose it's not me being completely myself. It is still a persona of sorts. But yeah, it's a funny one, the world of and actually when I come on as myself, I do musical comedy, which again is another form of defense where you're hiding behind a musical instrument and you're hiding behind songs. So I don't know if there'll be ever a time where I come on stage and it's just me and a microphone. I think I'm just a bit too extra or a bit too nervous about being fully myself.
You mentioned your musical comedian. You were in the final of the musical comedy awards this year. I mean, how did you find that experience? I mean, because one of the things one of the other guests said was that it was unusual to kind of be in a room full of musical comedians, where when normally you're the musical comedian on the bill.
Yes, I really loved that because often when you are the only musical comedian on the bill, you feel like an inconvenience because you're asking the tech to, can I have a DI for my guitar? Or, can we do a sound check? And they have to come in early and you just feel like you're annoying everybody else. So I really loved being around other musical comedians and they were all so nice as well. It was just a really friendly, fun atmosphere. And, I'm still in contact with many of the people that were in my heats and in the final. We all follow each other and it's a really lovely community. It was the first time I felt, well, actually, it was the first time I'd done a gig outside of Glasgow, apart from Edinburgh. So I had no idea what the London scene was like at all. But it was so lovely and it was so friendly. And I don't know if that's representative of London as a whole, but it was it was a lovely experience.
One of the other things you do, so in terms of content as opposed to the more artistic side, is you post about the cost of being at the Fringe, and I think it's really interesting. I think in general, and also it's probably it's good content for whatever better phrase. I mean, how have you found the reaction to that?
It's been great actually. I've had people reach out to me and say it's been helpful to get the real costs. And that's kind of why I did it because and I think this podcast is great actually for opening up that conversation because it's just not talked about enough, which means that people go in having no idea at all these hidden expenses. So as I said before, it's the first time I've done the Fringe. I knew it would be expensive, but there's definitely been things pop up that I didn't anticipate. So I'm just trying to talk openly and keep a spreadsheet of my costs so that going forward, anybody who decides they want to do the Fringe, they can look at my spreadsheet and think, oh, okay, that is actually what it entails. Because I think we should be talking about it. And I think I'm very fortunate to be with the Monkey Barrel and I've got a great, they've got a great deal for artists, but I think the Fringe can be quite an exploitative place and there are lots of particularly working class artists that are being completely blocked from that opportunity. So it's good to talk about it and to shame the system.
So we've had a few people on who performed at the Monkey Barrel, and they can say that it's slightly different, lower ticket price, but there's still a bucket at the end, and they pay what you can. So, do you have a kind of bucket speech prepared?
I've
And
done
is it going to be you or Ailey? How are you going to?
well. It's going to be Aileen. It's going to be Aileen. I think she'll do a better job than I would. I've still to work that part of the show out, so maybe I'll work it out as the Fringe goes. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, I'm conscious of that looming, so I do need to give it some attention. But being Aileen takes the pressure off a little bit somehow. It's not me asking for money, it's Aileen.
Yes. But I guess that's kind of then difficult as well in that...
She doesn't need the money.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're going to be hoisted by your own petard on that one.
Yeah.
So building that audience, like we said, takes a number of years. How deliberate are you with what you do in terms of, right, I'm going to post 4 times a week. It's going to be at 8 p.m. and 2 p.m. on a Thursday and all that kind of stuff?
So I have looked at, Instagram gives you stats on the most active times of day for your demographics. So I have looked at that, and round about 5, 6 p.m. seems to be one of my optimum times, because that's when I suppose people are commuting, looking at their phones. So I do take that into account. So I do try to post, in that kind of after work period, in the hopes that the algorithm will repay me. And also when I first started posting videos and thought, right, once a week, I tried to be consistent with the time of day that I posted, because I read somewhere that Instagram likes that. So I suppose, yeah, there's a loose strategy behind that.
Do you find different content works better on different things? So, Facebook audience will be different to a TikTok audience. And do you try and tweak that, or is it, you'll create what you create and you'll just put it everywhere and hope for the best?
Yeah, there's definitely a difference, and I do find it interesting seeing what does well on Twitter versus TikTok versus Facebook, etc. I generally will post the same thing on every platform, but then there's a few exceptions. So I didn't post my rat character on Facebook because I felt like it did really well on TikTok and Instagram, but I just felt like the audience that I get on Facebook are maybe a bit more traditional in their comedy. My mum, I don't think understands rat at all, but she understands Aileen. So I thought, you know what, I'm not even going to bother with that one on Facebook. Twitter, I've found that satirical stuff does well, although I have kind of shied away a little bit recently from Twitter just because of what it has become. But in the past, I did find that more satirical, observational stuff, political stuff did very well on Twitter compared to Instagram, for example. And there's gender differences as well. I know that Instagram is female biased, Twitter is male biased. So I'm sure that must impact what does well as well.
I said you've only got like the 2-week run, and sorry. Easy peasy. I mean, comparatively. So I think that kind of makes a lot of sense in that, from what I've heard and talking to people, I think they start to go a bit stir crazy.
Yeah.
Around that kind of period. So it's probably a good time to move out. I mean, are you looking to do other bits and pieces for the rest of the month in August, while strike while the iron's hot and all that?
Yeah, so at the moment I'm doing one other show. It's called Live Music and Chats, and it is happening on the 15th of August in Leith. And what that is, it's a kind of in conversation with Vic Galloway, who's a music journalist, about Scottish indie music, because I'm a massive fan of music as well as comedy. So we're kind of having a chat, and then there's going to be a musical performance by a couple of musicians, including Siobhan Wilson, who's a really amazing Scottish artist who I've collaborated with before. I did almost like a cabaret night as Aileen last year, where I had musicians and I had comedians, and Siobhan came and Aileen introduced her and she did her music. So I really love collaborating with people outside of the comedy scene, because, it just keeps it interesting. So yeah, Siobhan's going to cover West End Mums, which I'm really looking forward to, and we're going to have a chat. So that's an event happening in Leith. And then beyond that, hopefully I'll do the odd spot at Monkey Barrel, because I think they will be doing some compilation shows, but I haven't really thought beyond that for now. I also want to go and see stuff, especially for that last week when I'm not doing anything myself.
You mentioned about sketch comedy, and it kind of went out of fashion, but it now seems to be coming back into fashion. Obviously, I don't know how it's going to work or if it's going to work, but Saturday Night Live coming to the UK, but only 6 episodes, I think, or 6 or 10. It's not many, so they don't seem totally bought into the idea. But there's those kind of things, and I think as well the whole kind of thing of online and TV have kind of merged now. More people watch YouTube on TV than they do on their mobile, and so all these kind of things are coming together. I mean, do you think there's kind of a rebirth of sketch?
It does seem that way. I mean, like you said, there's SNL, Mitchell and Webb are coming back as well. There's my little good for her contribution. So I don't know why this has happened or what's changed, but commissioners seem more open to the idea of it. And I think a sketch didn't ever go away. It's people just moved on to TikTok. And I think they moved on to TikTok partly because of the lack of TV opportunities. You know, and sometimes I get a bit irritated by, critics dismissing us as simply TikTok comedians or online comedians. There's a kind of snobbery there, or maybe I'm reading into it. But I think, well, actually, they're not TikTok comedians. They are frustrated sketch comedians who are making best of the resources that they have to hand. And there's some incredible comedy on TikTok that I would love to see on TV. And I think for commissioners, there's never been a better time or a lower risk of commissioning something when you can see on TikTok that there is an audience and that it's really popular. And, I know that, people say that young people have abandoned what they call legacy media. Nobody's watching telly anymore. And that may be true, but why is that? I think it's partly because young people don't see themselves represented on TV because they're not being commissioned. So there needs to be more risk taking. And I know money is tied up in this and budgets have been shrinking, but I'm really glad that it feels like things are starting to change.
On Good for Her, for example, how does it kind of work? Do the BBC just kind of say, here's your money, not a penny more, and how you use it is up to you? Or do you have to kind of say, well, we need an extra however much for a wig budget or whatever it might be?
Well, I suppose I don't have a deep understanding of this because I directed it and I wrote it and I was in it, but I worked with a production company. They deal with the money aspect of it. I think it's the former where they give you the budget and then it's kind of up to the production company how it is carved out. I don't think it was a massive budget, but we managed to do a lot in 2 days. I mean, all of that was filmed in 2 days. We filmed 19 sketches in 2 days. It was crazy. But I think hopefully we showed that you can do a lot with not a huge budget. And hopefully we do get to do more. We'll have to wait and see. Again, everybody, if you're listening, get the iPlayer loaded up.
So one of the other things I wanted to talk about was, Scottish comedy. You mentioned Limmy. How do you find, I've kind of spoke to an awful lot of Scottish people and Scottish-based people on the podcast. And, it seems like there's a really nice scene up there, very friendly, works really well. But obviously, beyond that, how hard is it to get from, both physically and in terms of performing, to get from Scotland to, London, where pretty much everything seems to be?
That's partly why I decided to do the Fringe, because I really do want to try and broaden the reach of my comedy. And I mean, I do have a character who is very rooted in Glasgow in particular, and I've got a huge following in Glasgow, but I do feel like the character of Aileen is a universal character, and you find Aileen's in, Primrose Hill in London or, wherever you find a Waitrose in the UK. So I'm hoping, for me, one of my goals with the Fringe is to reach a much broader audience. Having said that, by selling loads of tickets at this end, maybe I've limited that opportunity a little bit. But I think one of the advantages of being in Scotland is that it's a smaller country, and so you feel closer to the BBC feels more within reach, perhaps, even just geographically. And I don't know, is it that sort of big fish, small pond thing? I feel like London is kind of intimidatingly large, and everyone goes there and is in competition and fighting for the same opportunities. And there's fewer people up here. Not that we're awash with opportunities, but it feels more manageable. And then the cost of living here compared with the cost of living in London is an obvious thing as well. But I don't know. I think it was funny. There was a kind of chortle announcement about Good for Her that went on their website yesterday, and it was myself and another comedian, Paul Black, who had a commission. So BBC Scotland commissioned these 2 comedy shows, quite different. Paul's is a short film, mine is a sketch show. But in the announcement, it was like, not much to report on TV this week, just this. And I was like, okay, I mean, it just, I can't help feeling a little bit dismissed there just because it's BBC Scotland. It's like, well, it's 2 commissions. I'm sure if it was a London-based production, would you phrase it the same way? And even in the review of that, they lumped both shows together, which I thought was really bizarre. So I think
the genre is Scottish.
Yeah. So it's hard to not be pigeonholed, and then maybe there's also this perception of Scottish comedy. Well, like you said, as a genre, but for me, it's just comedy, and I really find stereotypes of Scotland and Scottish people really tedious, and it doesn't matter like where the comedy's rooted. It's about whether it's funny, and I think about again through that London lens of, we need more regional comedy, we need more Scottish comedy or Northern English comedy, but they never use that phrasing to describe London-based comedies. Is Catastrophe a regional comedy because it's in London? It seems to be London and then everywhere else, which I think is a frustration probably for anybody who lives outside of London in the UK in comedy. And actually, some of my favourite comedy seems to be thriving in areas outside London, like the north of England. People like Sam O'Leary and Tom Lawrenson. There just seems to be an amazing scene in the north of England at the moment, which I really love. But I love London. I do love London. But it's not everything.
Thanks to Zara for coming on the podcast. You can find out more details in the show notes about how to watch Good for Her and where to find Zara online. If you enjoyed this, check out the other episodes with a variety of comedians, musicians, authors and others in creative industries. Thanks for listening.